Hello, it's week 2 of season 7 of the Andy Griffith Show. This week's episode title is The Lodge. Barney, Andy goes into the county clerk's office to visit with Howard Strag. And they have a cup of coffee together, and then Andy says he's going to go to his lodge meeting tonight. And he asks Howard whether he'd like to join the lodge. And Howard says it has crossed his mind, so Andy says, well, come on over tonight, and the fellows can get to know you. And then Howard's mother comes in. She says she made a dinner reservation for them tonight, and Howard tells Andy, Mother and I always eat out together on Wednesday nights. So he tells his mom he wants to move their dinner to a little earlier so he can get to the lodge meeting. And she doesn't like this change of plans, and she's not real impressed with this lodge meeting idea in the first place. And she tells Andy, so Andy, what do you all do during these lodge meetings anyway? And Andy says, well, first we just horse around. First we have a business meeting, and then we play cards, or we play checkers, and we have refreshments, and we tell jokes. And she's not real impressed with that answer either. Yeah, she says, Howard, is it really necessary for you to consider joining this lodge? You have your work and your music. And he says, I really want to. And she says, well, Thor, do you trust me to stand in your way? And she tells Andy, thanks for inviting him. And she leaves. And it's obvious that she's not happy about this. And while Andy's getting ready that night, Aunt Bee says she knows how Miss Strag can be. And then Howard comes by, and he and Andy go to the lodge. And Andy goes in first, and he announces that he wants to bring Howard in as a candidate for membership. And they all know him, so they say yes. And Howard does pretty well. He tells a joke that he heard from Andy earlier, and then they talk to everybody, and then pretty soon the meeting is over. And Andy tells them they'll vote tomorrow night to see whether or not to accept Howard as a member. And then they'll notify him by mail with their decision. And he tells Howard he thinks Howard's going to make it. So Howard goes home, and he tells his mother he's as good as in. And she goes to Gooder the next day, and Gooder tells her the same thing. And she tells Gooder she's concerned about the card playing that they do down at the lodge. She says Howard's father had a card gambling problem. And she says if there was only some way that she could keep Howard out of that lodge for his own protection. And then she thanks Gooder for listening, and she leaves. And the next day at the vote, there was one black doll submitted. So Howard can't be accepted to the lodge. And the next day, Andy and Floyd are wondering who it was that blackballed Howard. And then Andy can't avoid seeing Howard on the sidewalk. Of course, it's real awkward for Andy because Howard's all enthusiastic about thinking he's getting into the lodge. He doesn't know yet about the negative result of the vote yet. So Andy gets away quick. And Howard goes into the barber shop then, and it's awkward for Floyd too. Meanwhile, Andy drives out to the filling station, and he asks Gooder whether he knows who blackballed Howard. And Gooder says no. And Andy says we should all have a special meeting tonight to discuss this. So he drives off to plan this meeting. Meanwhile, Howard has ticked up on how everyone's acting uncomfortable around him. And now he tells his mother he's sure he didn't get in. And she says that would probably be better, that those guys just aren't Howard's type, that Howard is a cut above. And Howard says he doesn't agree. So at the special meeting, Andy is telling everyone he can't understand why anyone wouldn't want Howard in the club. Meanwhile, Howard comes up to the entrance of the club where Goober is standing guard, and he tells Goober, oh, I was just walking by, I thought I'd stop in. Of course, what he's doing is trying to get information on the vote. And in the club, they agree to call Howard back to get to know him better. Then whoever blackballed him might change his mind. And Andy comes out to call Howard on the phone, and he sees him standing there instead. And he says, come on in, Howard, we're just playing cards. But Goober won't let him in because of what Miss Strag said about Howard's daddy's card gambling problem. And he goes in and makes everyone put their cards away. And Andy wants to know what's going on, so they go out in the hall, and Goober tells Andy and Howard what Howard's mother said about his daddy. and Howard says that's not true. And Andy says Miss Strag does exaggerate at times, and Goulder says that's good, 'cause I didn't want to blackball him. So Andy goes in and says, the black ball has been removed, and Howard is now a member. And then Howard goes in, and he starts playing cards, and after he wins the game, he says he wants to play for the next 2 nights and raise the stakes. And when Andy and Goulder hear that, they get concerned. We'll see you next week for episode 3 of season 7.